What happens when one of television's most outspoken personalities walks into what she thought would be a friendly chat, only to find herself facing the most brutal verbal takedown in late-night history? In just 15 seconds, a single comment would expose everything fake about her public persona and leave her scrambling for dignity she would never recover. This is the exclusive story of how Bill Maher destroyed Rosie O'Donnell on live television and why everyone is still talking about it. The studio lights blazed hot as Bill Maher settled into his familiar chair, that knowing smirk already playing at the corners of his mouth. He had that look, you know the one, like a cat who just spotted a mouse that had no idea it was about to become dinner. Tonight's guest was supposed to be easy ratings gold. Rosie O'Donnell, the loudmouth comedian turned talk show host, was coming on to promote her latest project and probably throw around some of her usual political opinions. But Bill had other plans. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill announced to his studio audience, his voice carrying that signature edge that made guests either love him or fear him. Please welcome someone who never met a microphone she didn't want to grab, Rosie O'Donnell. The crowd erupted as Rosie bounded onto the stage, all smiles and waves, completely oblivious to what was about to hit her. She looked confident, maybe even cocky, wearing that oversized blazer she always hid behind and flashing that gap-toothed grin like she owned the place. Bill, she said, settling into the guest chair with the kind of casual arrogance that comes from years of people kissing up to celebrities. Thanks for having me on. I love what you do here, even when I disagree with you. Oh, you disagree with me? Bill leaned back, fingers steepled, eyes glinting with mischief. That's interesting, Rosie, because I was just thinking about how much we actually have in common. Really? Rosie laughed, that loud braying sound that had somehow made her millions. Like what? Well, Bill said, his voice getting quieter, more dangerous. We both make our living telling people what to think. The difference is, I actually think before I speak. The audience went quiet. You could feel the temperature in the room drop about 10 degrees. Rosie's smile flickered for just a second, but she recovered quickly. Ouch, she said, trying to play it off as friendly banter. Starting right off with the insults, are we? Who's insulting anyone? Bill spread his hands innocently. I'm just pointing out that some people in this business, and I'm not naming names, seem to think that having opinions is the same thing as having informed opinions. Rosie shifted in her seat. The confidence was starting to crack around the edges. Are you saying I don't know what I'm talking about? I'm saying, Bill replied, his voice now silk smooth and twice as cutting, that there's a difference between being passionate about something and actually understanding it. Take your views on vaccines, for instance. Oh, here we go, Rosie rolled her eyes dramatically. The vaccine thing again? Look, Bill, I never said people shouldn't get vaccinated. I just think parents should have the right to ask questions. Questions, Bill repeated, nodding slowly. Right. Questions like whether the medical establishment that has eliminated polio and measles might know more about public health than a talk show host who got her degree from what? The University of Loud Opinions? The studio audience was dead silent now. This wasn't the usual playful back and forth they expected. This was getting personal, and everyone could feel it. Rosie's face was starting to redden. That's not fair, Bill. I research everything I talk about. I don't just shoot from the hip. Research, Bill said, and the way he said it made it sound like the most ridiculous word in the English language. You mean like when you research 9/11 conspiracy theories? Or when you research fire safety and announce to millions of viewers that steel doesn't melt? That kind of research? Those were legitimate questions, Rosie shot back, her voice rising. People died that day, and there are things that don't add up. The only thing that doesn't add up, Bill said, leaning forward now, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade, is how someone with a platform as big as yours can be so irresponsible with it. Do you have any idea how much damage you do when you spread conspiracy theories to people who trust you? Rosie was fully rattled now. Her hands were moving around wildly as she tried to defend herself. I'm not spreading conspiracy theories. I'm asking questions that other people are afraid to ask. No, Bill said, his voice now deadly quiet. You're playing with people's fears and calling it journalism. There's a difference between asking tough questions and just being willfully ignorant. The audience was starting to murmur now. Some people were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This had gone way beyond what anyone expected from a late-night talk show. You know what? Rosie said, her voice getting shrill. I don't have to sit here and take this from you. I came on your show as a favor. A favor? Bill's eyebrows shot up. To who? Because it certainly wasn't to my viewers, who deserve better than having their intelligence insulted by someone who thinks Google University qualifies as medical training. Rosie stood up halfway, like she was thinking about walking off, then sat back down. You're being incredibly rude, Bill. I'm being honest, he replied. Something tells me you're not used to that. The cameras caught every moment of Rosie's discomfort. Her face was now bright red, and she kept looking around like she was hoping someone would come rescue her from this nightmare. Look, she said, trying to regain some composure. We can agree to disagree on some things, but attacking me personally is just childish. Attacking you personally? Bill laughed, but there was no humor in it. Rosie, everything is personal with you. When people criticized your conspiracy theories, you made it personal. When people questioned your qualifications to give medical advice, you made it personal. The difference is, when I criticize your ideas, I can back it up with facts. Facts according to who? Rosie demanded. The same establishment that you claim to be so independent from? Facts according to reality, Bill shot back. You know that thing that exists, whether you believe in it or not? The audience was starting to turn. You could hear little gasps and uncomfortable laughs. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a public execution, and everyone knew it. You think you're so smart? Rosie said, her voice now completely losing that fake cheerfulness she had started with. You think you're better than everyone else because you went to some fancy college. I think I'm better than people who use their fame to spread dangerous misinformation, Bill replied calmly. And if that makes me elitist, then I guess I'm an elitist. Rosie was trapped now, and she knew it. Every response she made just dug her deeper into the hole. The woman who had built her career on being the loudest voice in the room was being systematically dismantled by someone who was smarter, calmer, and infinitely more prepared for this battle. You know what your problem is, Bill? Rosie said, desperation creeping into her voice as she tried one last time to turn the tables. You hide behind this intellectual act, but really you're just another angry white man who can't stand it when someone challenges the system. The studio went completely silent. Even the camera operators stopped moving. Bill sat perfectly still for what felt like forever, just staring at her with this expression that was somehow both amused and deadly serious. There it is, he said finally, his voice so quiet that everyone had to lean forward to hear him. When all else fails, play the identity card. Can't defend your ideas? Just call someone a racist. Can't handle being challenged? Just claim you're being oppressed. Rosie opened her mouth to respond, but Bill wasn't finished. The funny thing is, he continued, I actually agree that the system needs challenging. The difference is, I challenge it with facts, research, and logic. You challenge it with emotions, conspiracy theories, and victimhood. And when someone calls you out on it, you immediately run to the same tired playbook. That's not what I'm doing, Rosie protested, but her voice was weak now, like all the fight had gone out of her. Really? Bill leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, now that he knew he had won. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly like what you're doing. You came on my show tonight thinking you could charm your way through another softball interview, but when someone actually pushed back on your nonsense, you immediately went to the angry white man defense. The audience was starting to react now. You could hear people whispering to each other, and not in a good way for Rosie. Some people were even shaking their heads. I don't think this is fair, Rosie said, looking around the studio like she was hoping someone would come to her rescue. This isn't what I signed up for. What you signed up for? Bill's voice rose slightly, the first time he had shown any real emotion during this whole exchange. You signed up to be a public figure. You signed up to have opinions about everything from politics to medicine to national tragedies. You can't have it both ways, Rosie. You can't demand to be taken seriously as a commentator and then cry foul when someone actually examines what you're saying. I never demanded anything, she said weakly. No? Bill pulled out a piece of paper from under his desk. Because I have here a quote from your own show where you said, and I'm reading directly, people need to listen to voices like mine because we're not afraid to tell the truth that the mainstream media won't tell you. Does that sound familiar? Rosie's face went completely white. She clearly had not expected Bill to come this prepared. That was taken out of context, she stammered. Context, Bill repeated, looking directly into the camera now instead of at her. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what people say when they get caught saying exactly what they meant. The context was you promoting your show by claiming you were some kind of truth teller that the establishment was trying to silence. He turned back to Rosie, who was now slumped in her chair like a deflated balloon. The truth is, Rosie, you're not being silenced. You're just being held accountable. And the reason you're so uncomfortable right now is because you're not used to anyone actually listening to what you say and then asking you to defend it. I can defend my positions, Rosie said, but there was no conviction left in her voice. Then do it, Bill said simply. Defend your position on vaccines, not with emotions or anecdotes or conspiracy theories. with actual science. Go ahead. Rosie opened and closed her mouth several times, like a fish out of water. The seconds ticked by, and she said nothing. I thought so, Bill said. Because here's the thing about having strong opinions on important topics. If you're going to have them, you better be able to back them up. And if you can't back them up, maybe you shouldn't be sharing them with millions of people. The audience was completely on Bill's side now. You could feel it in the room. What had started as a routine celebrity interview had turned into a masterclass in how to handle someone who trades on fame instead of knowledge. This is just mean, Rosie said finally, and her voice sounded like a little kid who had been caught lying. Mean? Bill shook his head. Rosie, do you know what's mean? What's mean is telling parents that vaccines might hurt their children when you have no medical training whatsoever. What's mean is spreading conspiracy theories about national tragedies to people who are looking for someone to trust. What's mean is using your platform to make people more afraid and more confused about the world instead of helping them understand it. I never meant to hurt anyone, Rosie said, and for the first time, she actually sounded sincere. I believe that, Bill said, and his voice softened just slightly. But impact matters more than intention. When you have a microphone and millions of people listening, you have a responsibility. And part of that responsibility is knowing when you don't know something. Rosie was completely defeated now. She sat there looking like someone had just told her that everything she believed about herself was wrong. Look, Bill said, I don't hate you, Rosie. I don't even dislike you personally, but I hate what you represent, which is this idea that having a platform means you get to say whatever you want without any consequences or accountability. So what am I supposed to do? She asked, and she genuinely seemed to want an answer. Maybe, Bill said, just maybe, you could try listening more and talking less. Maybe you could admit when you don't know something instead of pretending you do. Maybe you could use that platform of yours to actually help people instead of just making noise. The studio was completely quiet now. Even the technical crew had stopped what they were doing to watch this moment. I don't know if I know how to do that, Rosie said quietly. Then maybe, Bill said, that's the first honest thing you've said all night. And with those words, it was over. Rosie sat there in complete silence, looking smaller than anyone had ever seen her look. The woman who had made her career being larger than life had been reduced to almost nothing by someone who simply refused to let her get away with the things she had been getting away with for years. Bill turned to the camera with that same calm expression he had maintained throughout the entire interview. We'll be right back, he said. And when we return, we'll be talking to someone who actually knows what they're talking about. The audience erupted in applause as they cut to commercial, and Rosie just sat there, staring at her hands, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. In 15 seconds, Bill had asked her to defend her vaccine position with science, and her complete inability to do so had exposed everything fake about her public persona. The loudest voice in the room had finally been silenced, not by censorship or conspiracy, but by the simple demand that she actually know what she was talking about before she opened her mouth. And everyone watching knew they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for years to come.